Welcome to Thursday Thursdays at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. My name is Jessie Ott, the host of this podcast, which is all about beverage innovation. I talk with innovation pioneers from agriculture to glass. This week, I'm speaking with Claire Warner, Tales of the Cocktails Foundation, member, board of directors, and co-founder of Seedlip's sister company, AECORN, non-alcoholic aperitifs based on Sussex wine grapes and bitter botanicals. Yes, you guessed it, the ingredients do include the bitterness from the acorn. Both brands have since been sold to Diageo. Claire has always been a bartender at heart, but was able to use her skills in the corporate world during her tenure at LVMH, mostly working on the Belvedere Vodka brand. She started out as a brand ambassador. She then became the head of spirit creation and mixology, where she introduced 13 new expressions, including Single Estate Rye series, which landed the Vodka Producer of the Year 3 years in a row by the International Spirit Challenge. She's a tireless advocate of better health for the bartending community, as well as championing the low and no movement. Claire is one of a kind in our industry, and what she has done for our hardest workers is second to none. I have a lot of admiration for her and all that she has accomplished by promoting a healthy-centric approach to the bartender life. She's also a very insightful and giving person. I know all of you will agree once you've heard her story. Thank you for listening, and be sure to subscribe to be notified of all new episodes. Welcome, everybody, to Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. My name is Jessie Ott, and I have Claire Warner here today. I'm so excited to have you on, Claire.
Hi, Jessie. Thanks for having me.
Where are you calling from?
London. A very rainy, cold, grey London day, unfortunately, given it's July.
Yeah, I went to London when I was over in France and during grad school. I had a boyfriend over there, and it was the coldest summer in 50 years or something. It was like 1999, 2000. It was 2000. Yeah, it was so cold.
Yeah, I know. It's but I'm sure we'll get into it. But I've just come back from New Orleans for Tales of the Cocktail, and it was literally the opposite of today in London.
Opposite.
It was scorching hot. So, if anything, I'm kind of grateful for the grey sky today.
Well, you can rest and get a book and, lay on the couch and enjoy the cloudy weather.
Just lay very still after all the stimulus of last week.
Oh, yeah. I could only imagine. Well, and it's hot and humid, which is not only hot, but it's humid, so it makes it even, more unbearable. And you're, right there on the water, so.
Yeah, exactly. Lots of cool cocktails, though, so that's always a relief.
Yeah, I can't wait to get into it and hear more. So, where are you originally from? Are you from London?
Yep, I grew up south of the river in a place called Crystal Palace, and then left London when I went to university, and then came back east. So now I live in East London, where all the cool kids hang out.
Oh, okay. So you're part of the cool kid culture out there.
No, the cool kids hang out, and then there's me.
If you're like me, you go to bed at like 9 or 10.
Oh my God, yes, 100%.
Yeah, middle age stinks.
Mm.
That's cool. So, what got you into the business in the beverage industry?
So, yeah, I think like many people who are in our business, I didn't intend to go into the drinks business. In fact, I didn't even know that there was a drinks business. My parents both don't drink. And so my sort of early introduction to alcohol was at university. And then, university drinking is not naturally associated with drinking anything of a high quality or anything totally sophisticated. But I did bartend. I was working in a bar while I was at university. And when I graduated, I went on to run Nottingham's first cocktail bar with absolutely zero knowledge of cocktails. So I read lots of books, entered a bunch of cocktail competitions, and really sort of fell in love with all of the stories of the bottles that make up a back bar. and was fascinated to discover the industry that, we know and love today. And, that industry is built off of many legacy brands who have hundreds of years worth of storytelling and heritage. And I was fascinated. I was just fascinated by the passion and the craftsmanship that you discover that lay behind brands that have been around for so long. So these incredibly famous, huge brands that have hundreds of years worth of craftsmanship. So I kind of fell into it, having won some cocktail competitions, and then went over to the brand side pretty early on in my career. So I bartended for a couple of years. It was pretty good. Competed as a way to learn. We don't have sort of bartending schools necessarily. So one of the best ways to learn is what I found was to be amongst other more experienced bartenders, or even just bartenders that were coming up that we could kind of learn and lose together. Sort of losing a cocktail competition is a brilliant way to learn what not to do.
I see it on
And
TV now. They have that
yeah,
on TV now.
yeah, exactly. They didn't have it on
Yeah.
TV in my day, and this is
No.
like going back sort of 20 plus years.
Well,
But
can I ask you, do you know the difference between the cocktail scene in London compared to New York or the US? Did it
I think
parallel, or was one a little bit more sophisticated than the other, or advanced, I guess?
I would say that cocktail culture, or the cocktail revolution, probably happened a little bit later here in the UK than it did in the US, and that's largely because cocktail revolution was driven by bartenders discovering, or really going back into the history books, like pre-prohibition. Oh my God, I can't say it.
Provision.
Pre-prohibition. Thank you. And all of those amazing bartenders that were having to be very creative after prohibition, and creating drinks from a variety of ingredients, or also whatever was available. And then so the 20th century cocktail revolution really came out of the US, and particularly New York bartenders and some bartenders from other areas of the US, but just kind of rediscovering some of those very classic cocktails, and then recreating them with products, brands that were either available today that were of a higher quality, or even sort of resurrecting some very traditional brands that might have sat on a back bar with bartenders not really knowing what to do with them. I'm thinking of Lillet and a bunch of very sort of
Galliano.
traditional Galliano. I was thinking of Galliano, yeah. So all of those sort of dusty bottles that in the 80s and the 90s we kind of saw on the back bar and didn't really know what to do with, and they didn't necessarily have a purpose. Some very, very creative bartenders decided to research those types of drink categories and discovered that there are hundreds of incredible drinks that were made using those classic categories of spirits, and vermouths and aperitifs and amaros, etc., and got creative and sort of resurrected or created a new cocktail revolution that inspired a new generation of cocktail consumers and enthusiasts. And then that probably took a few years to translate over into the UK scene. But by the time I was coming up, which was like the early 2000s, there was an emerging cocktail culture, and one where many bartenders were cutting their teeth in cocktail competitions and beverage programs that were focusing on that sort of new classic style of cocktail. So we were a little bit delayed. We were a little bit behind, maybe, but I think we've made up for it in spades since over the last 20 years. And now, we see, classic cocktail culture, really driving the adoption of cocktails for the consumer globally.
Well, I know that through the podcast, I've learned that the UK was so far advanced in the non-alcoholic options that one of the companies actually moved his company there. They got better ingredients, and it was more of a culture around it.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I mean, it
So
really's
non
only been in
alc.
the U.S. a couple of years. Sorry.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, non alc has its roots in some very, very early products. I'm thinking specifically of a product called Aqua Libra, which was a non-alcoholic soda, but designed to be, a replacement for champagne or sparkling wine. And that, I think, was around in the 80s and the 90s. And
Huh.
then obviously the most famous non-alc product and person in the non-alc category is Ben Branson, who created Seedlip, who really sort of revolutionized that movement, and I think gave the consumer something to enjoy when they're not drinking, and the consumer for the most part in this country really drove that really drove that category. It was the consumer that were going into bars and asking for sort of better options in the non-alc space. And a lot of Seedlip's early success was driven through retail, so launched into Selfridges, and then bars came second. So it's very much taking the consumer interest in no and low, or no at that point, and translating it into that very successful brand that we have today.
Yeah. How long has it been around?
So Seedlip was launched, Ben started working on it in 2013, 2014. It was launched in 2015,
Okay.
and then went into the Diageo portfolio in 2019, 2020, something like that.
Okay. So quickly.
Yeah, very, very quickly. And now I think we've got 500 plus brands and products in that category, and it's growing exponentially every year. I've just finished judging the IWSC No and Low Awards, and just some of the fantastic innovations that are coming through that category are just so encouraging.
Good.
And ultimately, this is really giving more people more choice and allowing more of us to come into bars and restaurants and have a fantastic experience, which has to be celebrated.
Yeah. No, I agree. I haven't explored a lot of the non-alc brands or tried very many of them. The ones I've had in cocktails, which there's a lot going on in there. I
Yeah.
did try mezcal. I wasn't super, overwhelmed by it. So I hope I'm encouraged then by what you're saying. I hope they continue to get better, and
Mm.
and are it's so we're just behind here in the culture. You still talk to people about non-alcoholic drinks and they're like, get out of here. I don't want that on my menu. No.
Yeah.
You come here for,
There's still,
whatever.
yeah, there's still a way to go. But that's the way the consumer is moving towards. We talk about moderation as mainstream today.
Yep.
And, having come back from Tales of the Cocktail, I would say, every single event, every single bar takeover had at least two non-alc options. We had a whole
That's great.
dedicated beyond the bar space, which is dedicated to no and low. So there's, Tales of the Cocktail is the foremost cocktail festival in the world, and so from no and low being so prominent, I hope that will continue to trickle down into other into other cocktail cities, cocktail regions, where ultimately the the truest form of hospitality is putting your consumers' needs and desires at the forefront of your beverage program, and the consumer is telling us that they want more no and low options so they can live their more moderate lifestyles and balance drinking great delicious alcoholic drinks with occasionally drinking something that's no or lower in ABV, and ultimately it represents smart commercial value for your business as well. Here in the UK, we leave about 800 million pounds on the tables every year just by bars and restaurants not having a no or low option on their menu, and the customer ordering sparkling water or water. So, just by having one or two options, you can really open up the opportunity for people to trade up from, a soft drink or a sparkling water. So it makes good business sense to have something available for those more moderate consumers as well.
Yeah, it really does. And it's, especially for women, if you're trying to get pregnant or you don't want to talk about it or, things like that, it's a lot more, hidden, I guess, per se. What do you think, what do you think was part of that charge in the UK back in the, 2015, 2014? Was there a particular movement that was happening? Was it the millennials?
So a number of key drivers, I think, here in the UK for 20 or so years, there'd been, really quite aggressive communication on drink driving. So, lots of efforts by the government to help reduce deaths by drink driving. So we had some really, very serious spend behind not drinking if you were driving. And then because of that, a lot of investment by beer companies to develop a no ABV beer option. So beer was definitely was at the forefront of the no ABV movement. You also had, a greater interest in health and well-being. So fitness and healthier lifestyle was becoming, again, more mainstream. Then on top of that, we had the introduction of Facebook and the internet, and all of a sudden we're much more visible. So you're much more visible if you are intoxicated than you'd ever been. So it had repercussions either from a professional perspective, if you were applying for jobs, or just from a personal perspective. I think we didn't want to necessarily be seen to be intoxicated online. And I think also innovation. So more technology that enabled us to extract really great, delicious ingredients using different techniques. I know that Ben Branson from Seedlip really focused on pot distilling, but using the pot stills in an entirely different way to extract. And so I think a combination of factors all combined for Ben to create Seedlip, which then supercharged the interest around no and low. But fundamentally, I think it's today about being able to socialize without compromise, being able to live live with intention and live with an ability to stay close to our lifestyle goals. And many of us, more of us than ever, are interested in longevity and health and well-being, and still wanting to socialize, recognizing that we are a social species. And so we want to, ultimately have our cake, have our cocktail and eat it, drink it. We want to be able to go out, have a good time, but still feel good and productive the next day. So yeah, a combination of factors have really driven the rise of no and low.
Yeah, as I've gotten older, I mean, even a drink or two, you're like, why did I do that? So I guess it's the alcohol, but could be part of the sugar, right? Or when you're
I think sugar plays a part. We've not done a very good job, I think, in helping the consumer understand, ABV that's coming with the rise of lower ABV products. But I think, here in the UK, understanding units and ABV can be quite complicated. So there's a statistic by the Office of National Statistics in the UK, which I love, is that they do an analysis every year where they take what we tell our doctors we drink. So every year, if you go to the NHS doctor and it says how much you drink, they take that number, and then they also take the number from how much alcohol has been taxed, and see where's the discrepancy. And we are very, very far out. There's a huge discrepancy between what we tell ourselves and our doctors, or how we self-report, versus what actually is sold. And so I think that
That's
speaks to
funny.
how challenging it is for us to really understand our own sort of consumption habits and our own ability to know, what we're drinking and how we're drinking. So as a consequence, we can probably, drink more intentionally at certain points of the week. So we see, no and low, obviously trending sort of Sunday, Monday, or Sunday through to Wednesday. And then, we start to drink a little more over the weekends or later on in the week. But I think ultimately, we're getting better at understanding what we drink and how it makes us feel. And now we can still have a good time and still have a great cocktail, still have a good drink. And, with no and low, get on with our days, the following day. And there is a greater pressure on many of us to be more productive, to get more out of our days, for us to have to work longer. Obviously there's a cost of living crisis going on at the moment. And so there's a real pressure, I think, for people to feel as though they need to work and need to be productive. And sometimes, drinking, for me, even drinking 2 glasses of wine, can one day be fine for me and the next week not be so fine. So, I have to now really think about when I drink and what that occasion means to me, and for me to sort of want to not sacrifice, but really want to drink intentionally when I want to have something alcoholic, and also, drink freely when I'm just wanting to socialize and have a good time, and maybe I've got stuff to do the next day. But I think, this movement just gives us more choice and more ability to continue to socialize. And that's one thing that I'm super passionate about, is not creating barriers around when and how we hang out with our friends, because I think there's too many opportunities to say no to a good time, too many opportunities to say no, I won't hang out tonight, I've got work in the morning, I've got stuff to do. And that contributes to this epidemic levels of loneliness that we see globally. So if no and low can help to mitigate some of those feelings of social isolation, then I'm all here for it.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I know that you're really into cocktails, but have you tried any of the non-alcoholic wines at all?
Yeah, so having just come off the back of judging a bunch of non-alcoholic wines, that has been eye-opening for me, because that category, or that wine industry, the category, has sort of lagged a little bit behind the rest of the no and low ABV spirits. So spirits have really driven the growth, particularly for cocktails, and now we're seeing wine catch up. And so there's more investment going into the technology that's needed to help producers lower the ABV of wine through dealcoholization or spinning cone technology, and some nanotechnology that's also being applied to dealcoholization that doesn't have such a negative effect on the aroma and the texture of the wines. And I have to say that some of the wines that we tasted when we were judging were phenomenal. So there's a real closing of the quality gap between what we had a few years ago in terms of no and low ABV wine, and what we have currently, although a very small amount of producers are producing great stuff. But I think in the next 2 to 3 years, we'll see some phenomenal products coming onto the shelves, which is very exciting.
Yeah, that is really exciting. And is that mostly American wineries, or is that all over the world? Or
Really
different
driven
companies
by
all over?
really driven by sort of new world wine producers, I would say. So a lot of New Zealand, a lot of Australia, some US as well. Less so in Europe, I would say. So sort of the older wine producers are perhaps a little slower to catch up. But I would say that Torres, so La Familia Torres, a Spanish producer who've been producing wines for 150 years, have some exceptional no ABV wines, and they've actually been driving the no ABV agenda since I think 2008. So they again were very much at the forefront. So yeah, I think we're going to see a lot more, but there's already some really great stuff out there. And I know actually one of our judges was from Canada, and we didn't have any of the Canadian producers in the competition, But she was saying that there's some exceptional no and low ABV wines out of Canada. So looking forward to trying some of those as well.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's great. I'm really happy to hear that. I haven't experimented with them at all, you know. So I'm happy to hear that they're on the incline of quality. We have
I think yeah, go ahead.
we have a cocktail bar here, but it's like a retail store also, and you can go in and buy wines and spirits, and it's not so close to my house. But I should have bought a couple bottles of wine just to try them and see. You know, because for me it's about an experience, like you were saying. But you want to enjoy that experience. Like if you're gonna have, you know, you want a red wine with dinner. You know, who cares if it's alcohol in it? You just want the experience of the flavors together.
Exactly. I mean, wine is the unicorn, right? Because although spirits are exciting and we can create cocktails, and you know, there's a cocktail for most occasions. Maybe it requires a little bit more preparation or a little bit more understanding of how cocktails are created. So not everybody really wants to go to the effort of making a cocktail at home. Or great in a cocktail bar that you can have a no or low ABV cocktail, and that's the bartenders are experts and they can do that because they know what they're doing. But it's a little bit more challenging at home if you don't have the equipment, or if you maybe don't have all the ingredients. But wine represents, you know, the opportunity to just open a bottle and have that great low ABV experience at home that speaks to that low tempo occasion that we all know. You know, it's like it's before dinner or with dinner. Everybody knows how to open a bottle of wine and have it with food. And so I think the more of those great options around wine that become available, that doesn't feel as though there is a quality compromise, the more, again, we'll be able to enjoy no and low at home. And then cocktails, I think, are specific to a certain time, a certain place, a certain occasion. And, you know, bartenders are helping create a great first experience for customers or consumers in their bars. So I think, you know, this whole movement is just showing no signs of slowing down. It's incredibly exciting to have judged a bunch of great new products that I saw in the IWSC, but also just, you know, to see how many more of us are getting behind these great brands and these great producers, because that just encourages more investment and more innovation in the development of new great products.
So do you see that bartenders around the world are getting behind is it half and half, or?
I think that for the most part, yes. We're obviously that you're always going to get some detractors and some bartenders that say, I just don't get it, or it's a fad. But for the most part, I would say that the bartenders that I've spoken to during Tales of the Cocktail, or while I've been out doing no and low talks, have been incredibly receptive. You know, ultimately, as I mentioned earlier, it does represent, you know, a great business opportunity if you consider that here's a trade-up opportunity away from, you know, lemonade, soda, Coca-Cola, or water. And then there's an opportunity to still really flex your creativity and, you know, apply the same levels of creativity to your no and low beverage program that you would with your ABV, classic ABV program. And, you know, there's an audience for it. And that means if you've got a great no and low beverage program, I can guarantee that you'll have people coming into your bar and ordering those drinks. They might order them earlier in the day. They might order them as a spacer between alcoholic drinks. They might have a cocktail with lunch, whereas they wouldn't if you only had like alcoholic cocktail options. So ultimately, you know, for me, you know, if it was me running a bar, I would see that I can still be creative. There's an incredible array of products that are available to bartenders now. So I can be creative, and I can also be, you know, I can also create great drinks that will sell. So that is a business opportunity for bars as well.
So can we go back and learn a little bit more about your journey with Belvedere? So
Yeah.
that's
Um, yeah, that's
yeah.
where I
So how did
started.
you get? Yeah. So what was your first position with them?
My first position was UK brand ambassador. Um, it wasn't called a brand ambassador back then because there wasn't really brand ambassadors. There was one global ambassador at the time, which is a guy called Simon Ford, which you might know of him. He's the founder of Ford's Gin, and he was working on Plymouth Gin at the time, I think. So he was the first
Okay.
brand ambassador. And then I joined Moet Hennessy in 2003 and was a business development executive, but ultimately I was a brand ambassador. Um, and for a couple of years, did the UK, then moved into Europe, and then moved to New York with the brand team as the global ambassador slash really sort of running. I was the link between marketing and sales and education because I was the one that was kind of very much out in the field globally talking to bartenders and consumers. It was quite easy for me to pass back trends or things that I'd noticed. So after a short time, I moved into the role that I had for the longest, which was head of spirit creation. So I led the innovation team, and we developed 13 award-winning Belvedere vodkas in my time with Belvedere.
That's amazing. Congratulations. That's
Yeah, thank
huge. What? How
you.
fun.
Yeah, so fun, so
So
fun. And then the last project that I worked on before I moved out of MH was the one that I'm most proud of, which is what we call the Single Estate vodkas, where we really demonstrated terroir in vodka. So vodka is very much sort of an immediate spirit, and we worked with 13 different growers all across Poland, and there were noticeable differences between the styles of spirit that we were producing across those 13 regions, territories, and we made a special focus on just two of those areas. So one that was close to a lake, so a very uh, sort of slightly lowland part of Poland, and then one that was close to a forest. And those environmental elements really came through in the production of the spirit. So that was a beautiful project to work on because it
that's
really
so
did
cool.
demonstrate, yeah, like there's a terroir in vodka, which was very, very evident and very obvious. And so I did 15 years there. Wonderful time, really, really wonderful company to work for. But I think in the last sort of 5 years of my time with Hennessy, I became super interested in wellness and wanted to find ways for myself to have a little bit more longevity in this industry. How can we work smart in a very physically demanding industry, not only through what we consume, but we work long hours and bartending can be a very physical job. So created a whole program around sort of how we can support our health and well-being in the industry, which Mercy were very supportive of. But in that time, Ben Branson from Seedlip became friends. And I, at the time, was talking about lower ABV drinks and low sugar drinks as well. And Ben was launching Seedlip in 2015. And I was probably one of the first people to tell him he was crazy and that no one would ever buy Seedlip. But happily he didn't listen. And he launched Seedlip, and then I joined Ben in 2018, and then we created AECORN together, which is the sister brand to Seedlip and a range of non-alcoholic aperitifs. So very much in the sort of Campari Aperol style, and we also had a dry vermouth style and a sweet vermouth style as well. So something that spoke to that sort of
Very
very
cool.
traditional, European aperitivo style. Um, and they were based on Verjus that was grown in the UK. Pinot Noir, Meunier, and Chardonnay Verjus, and using British acorns as a bittering agent. and then a bunch of other lovely
Interesting.
botanicals. Yeah, so all natural, really beautiful non-alc aperitifs, because we really felt with
Acorn
Seedlip, yeah,
get mixed in there.
Æcorn,
That's fascinating.
yeah. So we felt like with Seedlip, we had Grove, Garden, and Spice. They represented a really great array of non-alcoholic spirits for multiple cocktail uses. But of course, going back to our conversation around classic cocktails, a lot of those classic cocktails had a vermouth or an amaro element. So creating the modifier range for Seedlip was a really great opportunity to give bartenders more options to work with. So those brands were acquired by Diageo in 2019, 2020. And the last few years have been sort of transitioning those brands across into the world's largest drinks company, which is very exciting. And now I work with I consult now, and I work with a number of small brands that all have a social impact. So very much in the no and low space, brands that are looking to either drive a sustainability agenda or drive a social impact agenda around helping people make more moderate choices. So 20 years, been very busy. It's all good.
Yes, you have. So talk more about the health initiative that you kind of transferred into. What was that, a program, or what did you create, or was it
So
was there some kind of awareness, or and
yes.
was it
So
whose was the intended audience then? Was it consumers or bartenders or both, or?
it was primarily brand ambassadors and bartenders, so people who were working with alcohol, traveling a bunch, or working long hours, and finding it difficult to find ways to balance those lifestyle pressures. And what we created was really a platform of coping strategies. So it was basically just access to resources. So what should you be eating? What should you be? How should you be recovering from like a long shift? How should you move your body to counteract the repetitive movements that you often use behind the bar? So it was really just a platform of resources and content that helped bartenders think about themselves in a healthful light. I think back then, this is sort of like 2010, 2009, 2010. So health and well-being wasn't at the forefront of our conversations in the bar world. It was only really then that we started to have these types of conversations. So initially I started to talk about the impact of sugar and why we didn't need to use so much sugar in our drinks these days, because we've got incredibly well-made spirits and modifiers, so they shouldn't necessarily need as much sugar as they did 100 years ago in the 1920s, 1930s. And just talked a little bit about the impact that sugar has if you are making drinks, but also if you are consuming drinks. Right. It puts a lot of pressure, an unnecessary pressure on your liver if you have a lot of sugar. And from that, we sort of transitioned into talking about wellness and health in general. So talking about lower ABV drinks, lower sugar drinks, movement, diet, exercise, as a way of actually helping bartenders see that they could be in this industry and still be healthy. I think there was a real, back then it was, we had bartender handshakes. So you'd go into a bar and, if you knew the bartender, you'd get a shot, and that would be a bartender handshake. There was a lot of,
I didn't know that.
yeah, so there was a lot of consumption, there was a lot of drinking, there was a lot of late nights, there was a lot of I think, you can only really succeed in this business if you stay up really late and you drink loads of shots and, you're part of that sort of network. And that isn't what a lot of our community wanted for their careers. They wanted to be able to still be successful and still be part of that network and not necessarily have to do a lot of the heavy drinking. And I think with our platform, we were one of the first people to start having this conversation around how can we be how can we think of this as a marathon, not a sprint? How can we think of this as a career that has longevity, as opposed to like a flash in the pan, a couple of years and you're burnt
Right.
out? And it was a really brilliant conversation to start having. And that meant that more bartenders felt that they could, they could say no to these bartender handshakes, that they could prioritize their health as a way to just do a better job, and not get sort of burnt out. And that meant also that there were more people with greater experiences that could come in to have these conversations. So today, that initial conversation around what we call drink, eat, live has become a huge pillar of Tales of the Cocktail, which we now call Beyond the Bar. And we have a bunch of expert professionals who talk about anything from mental well-being, sustainability, not just sustainability in business, but sustainability, like how do we sustain ourselves in this business, through to addiction, substance abuse, how can we move our bodies more, I think we're a very human-centric business, and for the longest time we were focusing on the business part, so the drinks and the glassware and the programs and the bars and the tables and chairs and that whole experience, but really neglecting the human side of what we do. And so now we're able to recognize that we're human beings doing this business, and so we need to think about how we can protect ourselves and live long, happy, creative lives in an industry that is and can be very very challenging, very physically demanding, can often put us at risk of harm, personal harm, mental harm, physical harm, harm from substance abuse. And so we need to have resources and support and access to those people who can support us throughout our careers. And that's one of the things we do at Tales of the Cocktail with Beyond the Bar. But there's a whole plethora of resources available to bartenders today that can speak to how to find more longevity in this business. The Drinks Trust also have a really fantastic program. And so I think it's a really important conversation that we started having back in 2010, and that we can continue.
That's great. I didn't know that was happening, but that's fantastic. I'm sure that that this, the new generation of bartenders really appreciate that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, we forget about the human element, don't we?
Yes.
Really, we really do. And sometimes I guess we take our workers for granted, which I think COVID certainly shifted that focus. Our restaurants really suffered badly, and a lot of the wait staff didn't come back. They decided to go get an education or go in a different direction, or whatever
100%.
direction they wanted to go to. So we're really good tippers every time.
Yes.
It was so
you
weird.
need to be.
Yeah, being in Japan, I don't know what it's like over there, but they get paid like $3 an hour, maybe. It's because it's all tips. It's all tips here.
Yeah.
So, in Japan, you don't tip, and it was really weird because we're so used to tipping. It's hard to get used to.
Yeah, similar in Europe. We are somewhere between the US and Europe, I would say, in the UK. But in the US, we know it's very challenging. A lot of the minimum pay is made up by tips. So in some states in the US, the bartenders, wait staff are paid very very low amounts, and it's something that we need to kind of look at and acknowledge and try to change, because these hospitality workers work incredibly hard to give us
Very
a great
hard.
experience. When we're out with our socializing with our friends, and we need to not neglect that, because if we've got nowhere fun or exciting to go, then what are we going to do with our social lives?
Yeah, when I lived in New York City, I worked at a restaurant, and I did breakfast, lunches, dinners, whatever. I just can't imagine still doing that. I have so much respect for people that can physically do it, because I just don't know if I could, being on your feet all day. And you know, I 100% respect for all of those folks out there that are helping us enjoy our experience. I'm sure that, all the industry is really behind that as well.
Mm.
How did you get involved with Tales of the Cocktails? Because it looks like you've been
Um,
involved for quite some time.
yeah, I the first time I went to Tales of the Cocktail, I was completely blown away, and I think it was maybe 2007 that I went for the first time. And it's just celebrated its 21st anniversary. So I've been going pretty much every year apart from the COVID years. And then even one of those was we did a digital version. So it's just such an incredible organization, and the last few years has really just changed how. So the last few years, when there's now a new ownership. So now it's a foundation, a non-for-profit foundation, and it has been for the last 4 or 5 years. And they just do incredible work. And I have always spoken at Tales, and it's really done fantastic things for my career. And then I think in the last 10 years, I've sat on various education committees and led the Beyond the Bar education committee. So that's very close to my heart. And then the last few years led the culture committee, which speaks more broadly about the culture of bars. And then the new owners of Tales of the Cocktail, the Solomon family, who are a family from New Orleans who wanted to invest in the into Tales of the Cocktail as a way to really preserve that festival for New Orleans. It brings in just under, last year it brought in $21.9 million into New Orleans for that week.
Wow.
So it has huge economic impact for the city
Yeah.
at a time when the hospitality industry in New Orleans is incredibly quiet. So very, very important to the Solomon family that they worked hard to protect Tales of the Cocktail, and then in doing so, there's a board of directors, and I was asked to join that board 18 months ago now, and myself and two other hospitality professionals are also sit on that board of directors. So we there's 4 people who are very much involved with bars, bartenders, hospitality, have come either from brands or from the bar community. And so we can hopefully help lead and shape where Tales of the Cocktail is going, and keep it very much rooted in bartenders and advocacy and education. So it's the mission of Tales of the Cocktail to advance, support, and educate the communities that we touch. And we are very, very involved in many bar communities all over the world, not just in the US. So it's a great organization to be part of.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I didn't know how involved it was. I remember going with Remy back in the early 2000s, maybe.
Yeah,
Like 2002, 3 maybe.
right. Some of the early ones.
Yeah, it was early. I was with our national account team at that point. It's my first job in the industry. But yeah, so it's been going a long time. You said it was 21
Yeah.
years. So yeah, it must have been one of the first years then. It wasn't
Yeah, and
obviously as involved as it is now. I mean, gosh, I went to the website and I can't believe how many events are going on throughout the
yeah,
whole week.
yeah.
It's incredible.
Yeah, so it started its life as a walking tour, really just acknowledging that New Orleans is the home of the American cocktail, and just the original founders of Tales of the Cocktail would take cocktail enthusiasts and then bartenders and then brands on these walking tour experiences, and then then there were seminars added and some events added, and it's just grown over the last sort of 21 years. And I think we welcome something like 20,000 bartenders, bar professionals, producers, brands into New Orleans every week. 68 seminars touching beyond the bar, cultural bars, business of bars, meet the producers, meet the authors. It's a really incredible way for our communities to come together and interact with one another. Going back to that point I made about it's a human industry, it's very much about relationships and who
Yep.
you meet and how you network. And, the number of job opportunities that come up, I think, during Tales are crazy. There's such a lot of networking happening. And then we have this incredible cocktail apprentice program, the CAP program. Sort of 60 plus bartenders from all over the world come into New Orleans to help really run that week-long program. So creating all of the cocktails, managing the transition between seminar rooms. We had a pop-up this year with some fantastic Singaporean bars. They sent in all of their fantastic cocktail ingredients that needed to be prepped and batched, and our cocktail apprentices did all of that. So, and that small community of bartenders, so the 60 plus bartenders that do the CAP program, that's a small networking opportunity for those guys. And then there's an alumni every year, and they can all interact with each other. So, acts like a sort of mini apprentice program, not even a mini, but an apprentice program for bartenders to really sort of level up their knowledge and meet bartenders from all over the world. So it touches so many different parts of the industry that it's an incredibly powerful program.
Would it be something where I could come in and just take and learn bartending and learn a class? Is it like that, or is it more involved than that?
So the CAP program is so you'd need to apply in order to be considered for that program. But the cocktail seminars, there's like all sorts of topics covered. So very much sort of deep dive into cocktail ingredients, historical look at ingredients that perhaps you're not aware of. Technique seminars. So if you want to learn how to sous vide, or if you want to learn how to, distill, or if you want to learn how to blend whiskey, we have lots of technique seminars as well. So I think from a beginner all the way to a seasoned bartender, you're always going to come to Tales of the Cocktail and learn something. And if you aren't able to come physically to New Orleans, there's still a bunch of resources that are available online on the Tales of the Cocktail website.
Okay. Yeah, it's pretty involved. I was pretty impressed. I've been in the military side of the business for so long that I was excited to kind of start looking at what events were still going on. And I see obviously Tales are going, so I'm definitely going to go next year. This is not the year for me to travel, but next year I'd like to get out and meet you face to face and meet people, in the industry there too. I remember it was a lot of fun, people rented out homes and had like happy hours where they had featured cocktails, and you could just kind of walk through the neighborhood and there'd be a party, and it was really fun. It was really, really well done. So I'm sure it's even more so now.
Yeah, I mean, the festival is based in the French Quarter of New Orleans. So if you've been, you'll know that it's a really beautiful part of New Orleans, the historic part of New Orleans. And you can literally walk to most of the bars and the locations where everything kind of happens. And we've partnered with the Ritz-Carlton Hotel. So it's a really great base which is Ritz-Carlton is based in the French Quarter, and it's a really great hub. But yeah, it's a great way to explore New Orleans, and it's a brilliant city to visit anyway. Very much focus on culinary experiences. So yeah, I mean, I would say to anyone listening or watching, please do consider it if you are into cocktails in any capacity. It's a fantastic place to come and learn more.
Yeah, definitely. So, have you had any mentors that have helped you throughout your career that you want to talk about or mention?
Gosh, so many. So many.
That's good to hear. I'm happy to hear that.
Yeah. I would give a couple of shout outs. I think one that really stands out is a guy called Charles Gibb. who is the CEO of Fevertree US now. But at the time when we worked together, he was the president of Belvedere, and a huge, huge cheerleader of mine. Always really sort of understood what I was trying to do, where I was trying to go with my career, and helped, I think, coach me in many ways to be successful in a corporate structure. Having been a bartender, moving from the bar world into an organization like Moet Hennessy or LVMH can be a challenging transition to make. And he understood what the qualities that I was bringing from the bar world, and then how to apply them in that corporate world, and how to make that transition as smooth as possible. And I see how he mentors and coaches so many people in our industry, not just me, but I think many people that he's worked with. He's a real cheerleader, champion for so many people in this business, and actually particularly women in the business. I was one of the very few women that sat in our on the executive committee at Belvedere, and that is, so going from bartender into corporate and then also being in the C-suite was another transition, which was pretty tough.
Yeah.
But he really, he's done a good job there.
What was the hardest part to transition? Besides the hours, I mean, 9 to 5.
What was the hardest part? I think that I'm not a very good poker player. If I don't like something, you'll know. And I think in that business, it's important that you understand how to communicate constructively when there's likely to be a conflict. And I learnt that from Charles. So lots of, how to communicate effectively, how to lead with integrity, how to enable other people to see your vision, even if it's not their shared vision. All of those skills he taught me, and ultimately really, really does come down to clear, consistent communication. He himself is from the military, so he understood why it was so important that we all understood, what we were all doing and how we could communicate effectively with one another. So I think that was what he taught me, is like, the key to success is through clear and consistent communication, really. And
yeah, that makes sense.
As unemotional as possible.
yeah, that's a tough one. That can get, you can get irritated sometimes. I can only imagine, like, just the surroundings and the blinders, and they don't mean to, but they don't know. They're not out and about like you were. So you being out and about and seeing and knowing all these things, and then them, you're like, I'm sure that was kind of hard for you both to kind of come together. So I'm glad you had someone that could kind of mentor that process, because I mean, when you work for a company, you know how marketing and sales are.
I do now. I didn't then.
Yeah.
We get really obsessed with, and rightly so. We're very passionate about our creativity, and we are creatives fundamentally. And I think what he also taught me was, you can have an incredible idea and it's a very creative idea, but is it a commercially sound idea?
Right.
Will it connect with what the consumer's looking for? Not only about bartenders and cocktail enthusiasts, but will it land in a consumer's life and make a difference? And that is the very important part that we sometimes forget. We get excited with this fantastic, cool idea that might be very niche, and it won't translate into a commercial success, which ultimately, these big corporate structures are commercial entities, and so all of those things need to link up.
Yeah, no, that's very true. Is there anyone else?
Yes, so Lauren Moat, who you might know. Lauren Moat is Director of Advocacy for Patron, Tequila, Global Director of Advocacy for Patron. And she is a dear friend, but another incredible mentor and coach. I think for me, Lauren has helped me find a lot of, sometimes this business can be very tough and it can wear you down a little bit. And she's a person that I turn to when I need a confidence boost or my self-esteem is taking a bit of a knock. And, she's an incredible advocate for many people in our business. But again, women in the business, she's a real mentor to many of us. So yeah, she's a great person. She's got wears multiple hats. I don't know where she finds the time. She has multiple businesses. She's not only global advocacy director for Patron, but also has a business called Bittered Sling, so a range of fantastic bitters that she's had for over 10 years now. So yes, so she's really well dialed into the community and all the way from bartender right up into the corporate world. So she knows the whole sort of gamut of issues and challenges that we often face.
That's cool. Is she based in the US then?
She is based in Amsterdam and she travels probably 80% of the time. So she's a very busy person. Yeah. So she's all over the place. And that's probably one of the reasons why she's such a well-loved mentor, because she gets to see so many people face to face because she's nonstop.
Yeah, that sounds like a really challenging job. To be on the road 80% is really tough.
Very tough, yeah. With a family, well, a family, I say, husband and a loving dog, which is a family, of course. But yeah, but she's a force. She's a formidable force in the business, and very lucky to call her a friend.
Was she at Tails?
Of course, yes. She ran an amazing seminar called the Mob of Mentors. So she gathered 12 mentors together, and they all gave a talk up on stage, a 6-minute talk each, where they talked about what mentoring meant to them and what mentoring, their sort of mentoring approach. And it was a fascinating sort of whistle-stop tour of like all these different mentors and their very different, distinct approaches. And then she also did a really, really great seminar on premiumization, which is what's driving a lot of the growth in the spirits category at the moment.
Yeah. Very cool. I hope I get a chance to meet her someday.
I'll introduce you. She's amazing.
Yeah, that'd be great. I love Amsterdam. I've been there like 4 or 5 times. I love that city. I just want to go and live there for like a month.
I know. If you do that, you'll have to go and visit another fantastic person, Tess Postumus, who runs the Flying Dutchman, or owns the Flying Dutchman cocktail bar, and she's a brilliant author as well. So she's another person that sits on the board of directors for Tales the Cocktail. So very important person in our industry. Yeah.
Awesome. I'm learning so much from you today.
Yeah. Who else do you want to meet? Who else do you want to talk about?
Yeah.
Who else do you want to talk about?
This is so much fun.
But there's just so many names, so many great people in our industry that all do so much. And I think the nice thing about the industry is that although it feels vast, it's actually pretty small. So if you're listening and you're like, oh, I'd love to meet that person, you should always be able to kind of reach out on Instagram and get a nice response, because I think most of us have done that in the past as a way to build our careers or learn something or know somebody. And I hope, if anybody wants to reach out to me or I can help anybody's career, then please feel free. But I do feel that most people in the industry like to help each other out. And again, it comes back to us being sort of very much driven by hospitality.
Yeah, that's true. I guess I never thought of it that way because, the one thing that's very consistent with this podcast is when the topic of mentoring comes up, they're like, just call and talk to anybody. We're all here to help each other out. It's, one of those things. I didn't think of it as being a hospitality side of it, but you're definitely coming from that side. So it makes total sense.
Yeah. Make it nice. And there's there's so much learning that happens on both sides of that mentor-mentee relationship. So, I always think don't feel weird about reaching out, because if you reach out to me and we begin a mentoring relationship, you're going to teach me a bunch as well. So it tends to benefit both parties in that mentor-mentee relationship.
Yeah, I love that. I'm gonna have to find somebody to mentor
Yeah.
me.
My door's always open, Jessie.
All right, great. You're raising your hand.
Yep.
I could learn. I was telling Claire before we started that I think I'm going to dedicate this years of podcast to the bartenders side of the business, because I'm absolutely fascinated. It's hard work. It's a lot of fun, like you said. You've mentioned creativity a whole bunch of times. I think that's what's really fun about it. I think it's never been a better time probably to be behind the bar, just because of so many fun things that are exploding with the Non Alc and the low and no and all that kind of all those movements. So I I would love to learn from you, because I'm so obsessed with understanding, well, why did you do that? Like, how did, like, we didn't even get a chance to talk to your products yet that you created, and the ingredients that go into it. Like, how do you know an acorn is going to give you the bitter, like that's the bitter you need to go into this ingredient? Like, I'm fascinated. I'm just absolutely fascinated by that.
I think the short answer is, like, read a lot. There's loads of great, Seedlip came from a very old herbal remedy book, and actually so did Æcorn. We found a recipe for acorn wine buried in the back of the art of after distillation. And
Wow.
we were like, what does acorn wine taste like? And it tastes really bitter and not great. But it starts you thinking about, well, what if I was to create some of these things now using the ingredients that we have available to us? So there's use all of the wonderful resources that we have in the form of books, either modern books that are available now, or even in the library, sort of digging back through the history books to see what people were drinking 100 years ago or even more, is often a great source of inspiration.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, acorn. So that's I just love it.
Thanks, mate.
Any resources or anything that you want to share that kind of helped you along your journey?
Oh, wow. I think online, have a look around the Tales of the Cocktail website, because there's so much on there, and there's
Yeah, there really is.
there's interviews, podcasts, videos, long form content, tons of stuff there. I would say the Diageo Bar Academy is another great place, particularly if you're interested in no and low. There's a bunch of resources around how to think about no and low cocktails, or putting together a no and low cocktail program. And then, Punch is a great resource. Again, sort of historical deep dives into, unusual ingredients. There's often stuff in there that they write really beautifully about a bunch of different topics. And yeah, ask bartenders, reach out if you're curious about anything, and think of us as a resource, your fellow peers and hospitality folk. We've all got something to teach each other.
Yeah, I love that. So what is we've talked a lot about low and no and how that's going to grow. Is there anything else that you're seeing as a trend, or anything coming to light that you see as becoming a new trend?
I think we've placed a lot of focus on no ABV over the last few years, and I think we're starting to see the emergence of some quite nice low ABV products. So I think that's an area to watch. I think that we've also seen a ton of tequila interest. So tequila has gone through the roof, but what I would say now is that we're seeing, other products from agave that are starting to become a little less niche and a bit more interesting. Mezcal is the obvious one, but there's a bunch of other delicious things that come from agave.
I can't wait for that either. I had a couple on here that talked about raicilla.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So
Yeah, yeah,
there's a ton of like new. I mean, when we look at some of the trends, what's driving the majority of growth at the moment is, as I mentioned, premiumization. So sort of
mm-hmm.
ultra luxury spirits, and then low and low. But I would say that we're seeing within very sort of dominant spirit categories more fragmentation. So within tequila, for instance, or with agave, you're getting more sort of like niche products emerging that maybe wouldn't have got any traction a few years ago, but we've got a more engaged, more discerning consumer, and a bartender that wants to differentiate their drinks offerings, so are looking for these more niche products as a way to point out their distinctiveness. So I think we're going to get a lot more movement within categories that's going to be really, really fascinating. And as long as we've got a brilliant bar community who can help the consumer understand the differences between these sort of like more niche products, then we'll be fine. But I think ultimately COVID, although a terrible time for many people, for many of us, and for hospitality, it did supercharge the consumer's interest around drinks in general, no and low specifically, but drinks in general. So we've got, coming out of COVID, a slightly more discerning consumer who are looking for great new interesting options.
So you think the consumer, there's like a trend for consumers to get more educated and to get more
Yeah,
wrapped around the brand and the brand story?
yeah, 100%. Yeah, so we've seen an uptick, a huge uptick in consumers taking the WSET level 2 spirits qualification. So that is a indicator that the consumer
Indicator.
is becoming more interested. Definitely more awareness around spirits. Again, this insight comes from the WSET. More interest in spirits. Wine is slowing down, but off a huge base. But
Right.
WSET in spirits is growing exponentially. So yeah, we're seeing that, and I think just looking at the media and the articles that are written about drinks these days are not generic. They're speaking to specific trends and specific cocktails. And I
Yeah.
think COVID helped a lot of consumers feel more confident about making drinks at home. So they set about their own sort of discovery and exploration at home. So as a consequence, they feel more confident now in bars.
Yeah, that's true. I wish I had. I did study the WSET level 3 wine though over
Oh,
COVID.
congrats. Now you have to do level
Yeah.
3 spirits, which is a whole different beast, apparently.
Oh, is there a level 3?
There is, yeah.
Oh.
Mm.
Well, given that we went to Japan, I'm kind of obsessed with sake. So I was thinking, I know they have a
Oh,
course in sake.
they
So
do,
that would be very
yes.
interesting. Yeah. You
Yes.
think that we
So
have, you think you know
do
anything
it.
about sake, and then you go to Japan, you go, I don't know anything about sake.
No,
Because
no,
they
no,
have
no,
really
no.
good sake there.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's a whole nother level. But yeah, that's a great course. I know the guy that wrote that, and he's an absolute geek on sake. So he really did a wonderful job in building that WSET or WSET course for you guys. So I would highly recommend doing that.
Okay, yeah, maybe I will. That's kind of gets me excited.
Mm,
In terms of education, think I've tapped out on the wine piece.
yeah.
Um, at level 3, I wanted to do level 4, but it's just not the way forward for me. But I think the sake could be a lot of fun.
Yeah, yeah, 100%. Yeah, and I don't know many sake experts, so you'd be the first one. So
That's
definitely a
true.
niche there.
We went and visited the first ever sake brewery. It was established in
Wow,
1141.
wow,
Yeah,
incredible.
yeah.
Oh,
It was very emotional. It was very cool.
oh, I bet. Yeah, fantastic. And are they
Yeah,
still producing?
yeah. It's unpasteurized. They started the guy who gave us the tasting is the 55th generation of samurai warriors. And
Wow,
they've been doing this since 1141. I believe it was the ninth business in Japan.
wow,
So yeah,
that's
it was incredible. It was
crazy.
just a really cool experience. But we I was now that I'm reading about sake. I'm in the airport on the way back, and they're like, "Yeah, unpasteurized sake should be kept cold." And because I was like,
Oh
"Why are they
no.
giving me bottles that are cold?"
Yeah. No.
Duh.
Yeah.
So
Have to
anyway,
do
they're
that.
in the fridge. We'll see. We'll see how they
See
turn out.
how, yeah, see how they
Anyway,
turn out.
I've
Yeah.
digressed. I am so sorry.
No, it's silly, it's fine.
So this has been really fun. I really appreciate you taking the time to kind of tell your story, and you've had an amazing journey, and thank goodness for you, because I think you really did help bridge that gap, and help with that movement of getting everybody kind of on the same page on how to move forward, because there's a lost in translation, you get, and it's not anybody's fault. It's just kind of how the business happens. You get into marketing and you stay into marketing, and then you jump around to different marketing companies, and you don't go out and sell, right?
Yeah.
When you're a salesperson, you're out selling, and you're not in. And so that's what a unique opportunity for you to be actually not really marketing or sales. You're actually someone that's out there creating and doing it on premise, and to be able to go into that corporate life. I bet there's like a 1% chance, 1% of people that could make that transition, because I think that would be very hard.
Hopefully more, because we do, I think, need people who have actually, walked the walk to be able to make what those corporations or those multinationals do more relevant to the consumer. And, I think only through being actually on the front line can you really understand what the consumer is looking for. So either a marketer, salesperson needs to spend an awful lot of time with their consumers, understanding them fully, or we need to bring more people who have been on the front line into those sort of corporate environments to help lead and shape the next sort of generation of drinks, because I think they will be very, very different from what we're used to currently. The younger generations aren't drinking nearly as much, and they're not drinking the same sorts of products, and they have different flavor profiles and different expectations. So we need to be aware of that so that we can continue to create the brands for the future and enable those companies to stay relevant, or new companies will emerge to take their places.
Yeah, that's true. I guess that's kind of the way that it's supposed to go, right? We're evolving and changing
exactly.
and getting better and creating new brands. That's why I was so interested in doing this podcast, is because there's no greater time than beverage innovation than now. And it's because of all the things that people have been doing for the last 20 or 30 years that it just helped lay the foundation for what it is today.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's going to go through another huge change, I think, over the next 10 years, just with how Gen Z, and to an extent, Gen A or Alpha generation will interact with wine and spirits and drinks in general. They will have a very different impact than what the millennials or the later generations have had. So I'm expecting tons of change, tons of innovation, tons of challenges, of course. But that's why I think it's incumbent on us to try and encourage many of the frontline workers that to play a role in how we shape the drinks industry for the next generation and beyond.
Yeah. Wow. I haven't thought about Gen A. Oh no.
They're a little way off yet. But Gen Z is definitely making some inroads into changing the way we drink for the better. So yeah.
Yeah, I guess the way you explained that, it was exciting and terrifying all at the same time. Because how is it going to change that much? Do we want it to change that much? But we don't. It's not up to us.
It's not up to us. No, it's up to them, and it will change. It will change a lot, and we won't even get into AI, which I don't think will have a massive impact on our hospitality venues, but could have an impact just in sort of how brands are marketed and how we'll interact with brands in the future. But I think there's going to be a ton of changes. I think I read somewhere today that 88% of Gen Z are gamers. So, it's like, where will Gen Z go to socialize, and might they not necessarily want to hang out in bars if they're gaming, or will bars need to accommodate for that gaming population? Does the interior of our bars look different? How do we optimize hospitality for that new generation who might not necessarily want to have the same experiences that we have or have had? So I think there'll be a bunch of changes just as technology and hospitality sort of begin to really merge.
Yeah, that's fascinating because, our generation, I assume you're around my age. I mean, we played outside. Yeah, we had Nintendo and Atari, but we didn't have a phone or we didn't get to watch a movie at dinner. I mean, they're
exactly.
this digital component has been in their face since since the beginning. So I guess it will be interesting to see how these generation after generation kind of come up, and if it's gaming, then maybe
but that's why it's so important. I think that hospitality is optimized as a way to act as a to try to get people. It needs to be optimized in order to get people away from the screen. Otherwise we will only end up socializing through screens, because they are designed to keep our attention on them, whereas hospitality historically is designed to keep our attention on each other through what we serve and through the environment that we create. And it's in a way, unless we optimize hospitality, we won't be able to compete with the technology of attention. That the screens and the devices are designed to direct our attention at them. So we need to find ways to counteract that in what we do for our businesses. And, great food and drink service is one aspect of that. What else can we do to appeal to a very attention sort of a distracted generation? We need to sort of think about that.
Yeah. Wow. That's really cool. I haven't even gone there to even think about it.
Kind of go
but
there.
you're spot on. I guess that'll be my my 3 o'clock in the morning thought one of these days.
Sorry about that. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I already have an idea that I would be perfect for these guys, for the gamers, but
yeah, good.
Anyway,
As long as there's a social aspect to it, then that's all that matters. I think we just quickly, we don't realize how long it takes for us to mature. And part of being a human is that it takes us sort of 20 plus years to kind of grow our human brain, to manage all of the social interactions that it has through being human, and for us to sort of like gently navigate our lives smoothly without conflict. And that 0 to 20 years is where we learn all of those social skills. It's what the social anthropologist Robin Dunbar calls the sandpit of life. If we don't learn how to be social in real life, in the social world, we will find it very difficult to navigate adult life without conflict. So it's really, really important that we spend time with each other in real life, learning social cues, and not spend all of our time on screens, because that only will end up in an environment where there's more and more conflict. So that's why it's so important that hospitality is that place where we go to connect in real life, learn about each other, learn social cues, learn social hygiene, and navigate life more smoothly. And that's why it's really, really important that we optimize hospitality for the greater good and not default to screens, because that only leads to greater misunderstanding.
Yeah, that's true. Well, very well put. That was amazing. I love the way you're thinking. It's incredible. It's been an absolute pleasure meeting you, Claire. This has
Thank
been
you.
really fun. I really appreciate it. I'm sure it's 10:30 here Eastern, so I don't know. You're probably really close to the end of your day over there. About
It's
ready for a
time.
little low and no happy hour.
Well, I've got time to walk the dog. He's been scratching on the door for the last 20 minutes, so he's obviously
Oh
ready to go
no.
out. No, it's good. And yes, then it'll be time for a little no and low cocktail hour when I come back.
Okay. I did forget to ask you, do you have a particular cocktail that you like to make or is a signature of yours?
Um, I love, it'll sound crazy actually, but I love a martini. So we have a martini, a fridge door martini, my husband calls it. So it's a martini that's in the fridge ready to go at any given moment. So you
What?
just take, you take out, depends on how you drink your martini, but we take out 50 ml of either gin or vodka and then replace that 50 ml with vermouth and some water. And then you can just pour it. So it's got the dilution, it's got the vermouth, it's ready to go. You don't even need
Nice.
a tin or a shaker for that. So that's my go-to. Obviously Belvedere is in the fridge, in the freezer for me, and my husband
Right.
has some delicious Ford's gin. So we've always got a martini in the freezer.
Oh, I love that. Well, isn't the number one cocktail the espresso martini?
Ah, that is a delicious drink as well. But I am so
Really
sensitive
good.
to caffeine that I can't really drink them. And I don't think they're as delicious if you have a decaffeinated espresso martini. So I just go for
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know either. I don't fancy ordering one, to be honest, but kind of missing the point. But yeah,
Yeah.
I love them, but they're lethal for me. So I go straight for the martini.
Yeah, that sounds good. My wife loves martinis too, vodka martinis. I like gin
Oh yeah.
martinis.
Yeah. Yeah, I think same for my husband and I. I'm okay with a gin martini, but give me vodka any night of the week.
You're a vodka girl. She is too.
Yeah.
It's
Yum.
really the only spirit she'll drink
Yeah, it's
is
so
vodka.
versatile, and you can have so much fun with vodka. And I like to see actually that vodka having kind of lost out over the last few years to gin in terms of the popularity wars. Vodka is on its way back, and a whole new generation of consumers are learning to love vodka again, which is cool.
Yeah, I do too. It's one of those things that it's kind of shocking,
Yeah,
because it's just it's how is vodka not growing? I don't get it.
I know.
Because it's just
But
always there.
the good thing
It's
is that you've
solid.
got vodkas that are very much about flavor, texture, complexity now, which is driving a whole new conversation around vodka. So it's not none of that sort of like neutral, odorless, colorless, flavorless type, vibe. It's a lot more about the antithesis to that, which is nice and exciting.
Yeah, for sure. All right, well, I will let you go. I'm sure your dog is ready to go on a walk.
He is.
I don't want to keep
Thank,
I don't want to keep him from walking, he or she from walking.
thanks, Jessie. I could talk to you for hours, but yeah, I should probably
I
walk
know, I
him.
feel like we can just keep going. I
Yeah,
feel
no.
bad. Alrighty, well, I will say goodbye and wave goodbye, and
Thanks so
until
much.
next time.
Until next time.
Thank
See
you.
you next time.
Yeah, see you next year for sure.
Mm.
Produced by Fedora J Productions.